whatever they were doing in Egypt. We celebrate that when we see activism in the streets of Iran. But here, when somebody starts, rallying against something that the government wants to implement, biglang red tag, biglang they're marked as communists, biglang they're marked as insurgents. That doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem right. So, yeah, that's my take on it.
Sorry, Sir Edward, naka-opening statement pala. Ay, hindi pala. Sige, go ahead, Sir Edward. 30 seconds.
Yung kasing mga aktivista natin, pare, yan yung mga in-identify ni Joma do sa video niya na mga kasama nila. Like LFS, Gabriela, ACT teachers. Mismong yung puno na nila naghulog sa kanila eh. So, ano pang masama kung sabihin natin kasapi sila ng NPA ngayon? Doon naman ang gagaling yung mga red tagging nila Baduy. They always point to Joma. Sisihin nyo si Joma dahil yan ang totoong nag-red tag sa inyo. Thank you.
Yes, 30 seconds, Sean. Sorry. If you want to answer lang. If you don't, okay lang din.
I mean, yeah, this might not be a strong rebuttal, no? Pero hindi rin ata trabaho ni Badoy to do that. If I'm not mistaken, like officially identifying organizations as communist or armed insurgents, like that needs to be declared by the courts, I think. So doing it outside of that protocol, sabihin natin sige, it's their opinion, but their opinion carries weight, and they're not guests in SMNI as private individuals. They're guests in SMNI as members of their respective organizations. So out of protocol din natin yung they just read that. Now sige, if we go through the courts and the courts say na yeah, that person or that group is really part of the Communist Party, then so be it.
Yes, thank you, Sean. Hello speakers, if you see me or reform thumbs up, that means we need to wrap up your kasi yung rebuttal this is 30
Okay.
seconds. Thank you, Sean.
Nagta-thumbs up ako kasi I agree. Sorry. Okay.
Sira, 100 yung 100%
Yeah.
lang yung agree ko.
Okay.
Sige, our next speaker is Thea. Go ahead, Thea.
Hi guys. Medyo may sakit ako ngayon. Anyway, my stance on red tagging has not changed. So I've always been anti-red tagging. So it doesn't mean that if I voted or supported pala, did not vote for Duterte, I have to agree with everything. So if you have not noticed, the way I argue even on spaces is I'm always pro due process and rule of law. Kaya ako ina-attack ng mga rabid DDS. At saka hello pala sa mga minions ni Badoy dito. Especially those who have been tagging me as a sympathizer of CPP-NPA. Nandiyan nasa baba yung mga naka-block na. Anyway, tigil-tigilan niyo yung pagiging rabid ninyo. Anyway, I just wanna react to sinabi kanina ni Northern. Sabi niya, if you're a member of the press daw, you have the freedom of you have the freedom of the press without undue interference or censorship, which is true naman. Journalists, they play a critical role in investigating and reporting on several ideologies and groups, including yung mga insurgents, leftist groups, and so on. However, freedom of the press does not grant journalists the right to engage in baseless accusations or red tagging or whatever you call it. Masyado kayong technical at masyado kayong OC sa mga semantics. Whatever it is, tingnan nyo lang yung ginagawa ng SMNI. Whether tagging leftist or otherwise, or even white supremacist or wala palang white supremacist or fascist or whatever, that's not ethical journalism. Kasi ethical journalism encourages journalists to be responsible in the way they report, and everything needs to be based on verifiable facts. Ano ba yung sinasabi na verifiable facts? Pag may ebidensya, dapat ina-assail yung ebidensya. Hindi ibig sabihin na kung testimony yon, first-hand testimony or first-hand experience. Kailangan i-assail yan. Saan? Sa korte for it to be credible. Otherwise, hindi yan credible. Okay? We have to verify this information. Kaya, ako wala akong problema sa mga ebidensya. My problem here is the way they name groups and individuals publicly. Okay, and then by the way, when I stated my stance on anti-red tagging, I was not even referring to Badoy in the first place. I was just referring to the act of arbitrarily tagging people or labeling people, groups, publicly. And then also, Badoy is guilty of that. Kasi dati part siya ng NTF-ELCAC. Now, she's a private citizen. However, yung mga sinasabi ninyong freedom of the press, it's not absolute. Again, pag sinasabing may ebidensya, whether it's through ka, Eric, we have to assail that in court. Again, that is just the nature of evidence and testimony. For it to be credible, for it to be 100% sure, we have to subject it to scrutiny.
Okay. Maya na yan. For now, tignan natin yung source ng conflict. Kung bakit sila nag-aaway. Kasi bago na naman itong beef ng mga dating DDS tsaka ngayon mga Uniteam supporters. So, yung sa side ng mga DDS, sang-ayon sila sa mga tinatawag na red tagging, kung saan may mga political officials na basta-basta na lang na-accuse na may kinalaman sila sa CPP-NPA or teka lang. Thank you. So yun nga, yun ang goal nila para ma-call out sila agad kasi parang may parang tinatago daw nung mga yung mga government organizations na yon at saka yung mga union groups at iba pang mga organizations, parang tinatago nila yung pagka-komunista nila. So yun na essentially ang red tagging. Parang ina-accuse mo sila na kasapi sila sa isang grupo. Yung pagiging involved sa CPP-NPA in some capacity. Yun ang red tagging essentially. So ang mga DDS sang-ayon sila doon kasi gusto nila malaman yun agad. Yun yung ginawa ni Duterte dati, yun yung point na ginawa yung NTF-ELCAC, yun yung point ng mga ganon. So doon sila sang-ayon. Ngayon yung mga Uniteam supporters ngayon, marami sa kanila na parang medyo restrained sila sa pagre-red tag. Although sang-ayon sila sa parang gusto nila malaman yung information at gusto nila makaalam kung ano ba talaga yung katotohanan. Pero restrained sila sa sa paraan na basta-basta na lang mag-a-accuse ng pagiging komunista o may kinalaman sa pagiging komunista. So tignan natin kung saan ang simula ng conflict. Nakay Nina to. Nina Bellatrix. Okay, there it is. Nina Bellatrix. Siya lagi kong sinesearch pag nasa side ng DDS. So, let's search. Medyo mahaba-haba na to. Kasi mga ilang araw na yun eh. So again, iyan naman natin i-clarify natin. Sa isang side, sang-ayon sila sa pagre-red tag, mga DDS. Tapos yung mga kakampings, yung mga Uniteam supporters ngayon, medyo mas restrained sila. So katulad ni Tia Tan. To. Here it is. Start of the conflict. Paki-refute na lang ng arguments na to by saying tagging activists who are not members of CPP, NPA, NDF does not violate due process. Kahit sino sinusuportahan nyo, the Bill of Rights are clear. Okay. Paki-refute daw sabi ni Thea, pero she blocked everyone. Sino kausap mo? So, na-block niya itong si Nina Bellatrix. Tama ba pronunciation? Blinak niya kasi, to be honest, I'm not sure. Let's look down a little further. Okay, this is enough. I can't find it. So it looks like nandito na yun. Where was I again? Oh shit. Patingin nga ng chat. Not studio. Guys, paano ulit makikita yung dito? Yung chat. There it is. Ito ba yan? Live chat. Okay. Not that anyone cares. Gusto ko lang malaman for future reference. Tas dito siya sa right side. Okay. Oh, people are watching. Come on, comment kayo para may alam tayo ng pag-uusapan. Natok ako. Come here. Need an audience. I'm not just gonna talk to myself. Not now. It's fine. There we go. Okay, someone's there. Let's go. Got live chat on. This should. How can I overlay this thing? I don't know how I can overlay this. That's the problem. I want to be able to overlay this thing. There we go. That's my boy Flan. You know what we should do? We should have although the problem is I don't know like what your schedules are, but I've been thinking for a while that maybe you guys want to do like um what's this? Like we can like a bunch of us in that Discord can have a like little session and then we can just talk about like random shit that's relevant in Philippines and then you know that'll make for a good stream. What do you think? Flan, what do you think? Hold on. Let me see if it's in the chat. Chat. Nah, that's it. Oh. Yep, would work as the schedules are full for each. Okay, that's fair. So I guess what I need to do now is just do the scheduling and then we can figure out like, you know, when we would actually be able to do it. But anyway, let me talk about something else for now. So I posted this the video that I made earlier on my stream yesterday about you know, there's this post on TikTok where they were blaming like there's this Filipino American guy who was blaming his parents for not teaching him enough Filipino culture, and you know the comments were actually pretty reasonable and agreed with me, which is rare, believe me, because most of the time, you know, when I post something in our Philippines, usually like I get shit on, I get downvotes, I get bashers, but now they're mostly in agreement, so this is nice. I have an audience, and you know, if you look at my percentages here, most of my traffic does come from external, so it most likely came from our Philippines, which is kind of sad, but that's kind of my audience for now because I don't really have a base YouTube audience yet, as sad as that sounds, but you know, that's what I have to do. I have to find that audience, but I don't yet. But this is pretty good analytic. This is pretty good so far. 3 hours, which is actually above average for how long this video's been out, which I think it has been it's been 11 hours. But yeah, this is still above average. Although most usually at this point, because this is how it usually happens on YouTube, when at least for my base traffic is I get external views first, so like wherever I advertise, so I advertise on Discord, on Reddit, on Facebook, and Twitter. So you know, those are like my four bases where I advertise on, but my YouTube base doesn't really like, it depends on the content. Sometimes I get a lot of viewers based on search results, or like if it comes up in their like suggestions. Essentially, if my video shows up in the algorithm somehow, then I'm gonna get a lot of views. So if again, this might bore you, but this is just how like my views are populated. So let's look at top views. So if you look at my top views, it's celebrity content. So this is the type of things that I don't have to advertise on. And you know, celebrities again. So this was back when Riz Miguel said he was sexually assaulted, you know, gay problems. And this is Percy Lapid. So this was when he was shot, you know, leaving his house in Las Piñas. I did not need to advertise this at all. This was definitely 100% searched in YouTube or put in the algorithm. So if you look at the reach. Yeah. Well, 27% still came from external, but 36% came from YouTube. So that's great. Let me look at the chat again. Yeah. So that's what that's like my base traffic for videos where I do not have to advertise it, because the algorithm does it for me, because it's such a trending topic. Hello. And that's why I get a lot of views even if I didn't have to do anything. So Vong Navarro, when he was arrested by the NBI because he was alleged at the time to have sexually assaulted, or I can't say it on YouTube, I might get censored, but grape somebody. So that's it was a trending topic at the time, so that's why I got a lot of views. I didn't have to do anything. Now, what was the most views that I got where it was mostly external? Let me see. I don't think it's this, because yeah, it was browse features and suggested. Not much on external. It's not much, because honestly, I don't get a whole lot of traffic from Twitter. Maybe this one. Reach. Yeah, oh no, still. No, actually, this is a pretty big percentage considering it's external. But this is a controversial topic, so this is about like BBM back then, when he was first elected. Obviously he had a lot of issues, supposedly, especially with his staff and whatnot, and BBM didn't start off well. This is assumed true by most people, I think. I'm not completely sure, but I do think that is the case. So yeah, essentially that's how my views are made up of. What about this one? Wow, this got a whole lot more views than I thought. Anyway, let's look at current topics. First world problems. I don't know, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to talk about, Jero? I mean, Flan. Sorry. Hypernormalization. What's that? What is hypernormalization? Oh, this is on one of my shorts. Hold on a second. Although, here's the thing, I saw it on a video, but apparently YouTube is like trying to get away from shorts, which is like the equivalent of TikTok stories for YouTube, because apparently they have that, but YouTube is apparently trying to get away from that, so that's interesting. Hypernormalization. Alright, let's figure this out. Is this it? Is this what you're talking about? Ah, okay. Hypernormalization. Is this it? Come on. Okay. Let's look at a trailer. This is back in 2016, by the way, so this is a little aged. Oh, this is the whole thing.
We live in a strange time. Extraordinary events keep happening that undermine the stability of our world. Suicide bombs, waves of refugees, Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, even Brexit. Yet those in control seem unable to deal with them. And no one has any vision of a different or a better kind of future. This film will tell the story of how we got to this strange place. It is is about how over the past 40 years, politicians, financiers and technological utopians, rather than face
gonna
up
watch
to the
this
real complexities of the
later.
world, retreated.
I got something to watch.
Instead, they constructed a simpler version of the world in order to hang on to power. And as this fake world grew, all of us went along with it, because the simplicity was reassuring. Even those who thought they were attacking the system, the radicals, the artists, the musicians, and our whole counterculture, actually became part of the trickery. Because they too had retreated into the make-believe world. Which is why their opposition has no effect, and nothing ever changes. But this retreat into a dream world allowed dark and destructive forces to fester and grow outside. Forces that are now returning to pierce the fragile surface of our carefully constructed fake world.
I have to say, the presentation is really nice. So I'll say that.
New York. The other is Damascus. It was a moment when two ideas about how it might be possible to run the world without politics first took hold. In 1975, New York City was on the verge of collapse. For 30 years, the politicians who ran the city had borrowed more and more money from the banks to pay for its growing services and welfare. But in the early 70s, the middle classes fled from the city, and the taxes they paid disappeared with them. So the banks lent the city even more. But then they began
You
to
need
get
the middle
worried about
class,
the size
bro.
of the growing
That's a
debt,
fact.
and whether
You
the
need the
city
middle
would ever be
class.
able to pay it back.
Urgh.
And then one day in 1975, the banks just stopped.
Because the corporations didn't pay any
The city
taxes.
was regulated
Hello.
to issue bonds in return for the loans, overseen by the city's financial controller.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the City of New York is offering for competitive bidding sale 260 million tax anticipation notes, of which 100 million will mature on June 3rd, 1975.
The banks were supposed to turn up at 11 a.m. But it soon became clear that none of them were going to appear. The meeting was rescheduled for 2 p.m. and the banks promised they would turn up.
The announcement on behalf of the controller is that the offer, which we had expected to receive and announce at 2 o'clock this afternoon,
He doesn't have
now
any
expected
sections
at
on this.
4 o'clock.
I do it a
Does
lot
this
on my
mean that,
videos
so far
where
nobody wants those
I have like little
we will
sections.
be making
Hey,
further
who's Matt Cat?
announcements at
Hello.
4 o'clock, and anything
Hello,
further
Matt
that
Cat.
we could say now, I think, would
By the
be
way, my
announced
stream is
at
delayed
the
for like a
sale,
minute
which is now in
or
progress.
30
Does this mean that
seconds.
you have not been able
Depends.
to sell
It's
so far today?
YouTube's thing. Or maybe it's
We
in my
will have a
OBS.
further announcement at 4 o'clock.
This is what my OBS looks like.
What happened that day in New York marked a radical shift in power. The banks insisted that in order to protect their loans, they should be allowed to take control of the city. The city appealed to the president, but he refused to help. So a new committee was set up to manage the city's finances. Out of 9 members, 8 of them were bankers. It was the start of an extraordinary experiment where the financial institutions took power away from the politicians and started to run society themselves. The city had no other option. The bankers enforced what was called austerity on the city, insisting that thousands of teachers, policemen and firemen were sacked. This was a new kind of politics. The old politicians believed that crises were solved through negotiations and deals. The bankers had a completely different view. They were just the representatives of something that couldn't be negotiated with. The logic of the market.
That's pretty interesting. But I'm gonna say to that, the negotiation wasn't with his presumed negotiation. The negotiation was beforehand, where they agreed with the bankers to let them run the city. That's what they agreed on, supposedly. It wasn't, they essentially had no choice. So they had no bargaining chip. So what was there to negotiate? Think about it. Nothing. They had no bargaining
There
chip.
was no alternative.
No
to
bargaining
this.
chip.
It should run society.
You get free money, but we run this shit now. That's essentially what the bankers were saying.
Just by shifting paper around, these slobs can make $65 million in a single transaction. That would take care of all the layoffs in the
Dystopia.
city. So it's reckless, it's cruel, and it's a disgrace.
There'd be a fair number of bankers, of course, who'd say, well, it's the unions who've been too greedy. Now, what would your reaction be to
Now, I
that?
guess they're right in a way. If you can make $60 million on a single transaction, and a worker makes $9,000 a year, I suppose they're correct, and as they go back to their little estates in Greenwich, Connecticut, I want to wish them well, the slobs.
But the extraordinary thing was, no one opposed the bankers. The radicals and the left-wingers, who 10 years before had dreamt of changing America through revolution, did nothing. They had retreated and were living in the abandoned buildings in Manhattan. The singer Patti Smith later described the mood of disillusion that had come over them.
That's one of the main things with living in a city, because obviously, this is like the most dystopian scenario, I guess, that he was trying to put out. But obviously, if you live in a city, land is more expensive, so that's why rent is more expensive. So that ties in together. So that's why when you live like in a rural area, land is cheaper. So all this information is obvious, but I'm just saying that's what it is.
With the political movements any longer.
Just wanted to point it out.
All the manic activity in the streets. In trying to join them, I felt overwhelmed by yet another form of bureaucracy. What she was describing was the rise of a new, powerful individualism that could not fit with the idea of collective political action. Instead, Patti Smith and many others became a new kind of individual radical who watched the decaying city with a cool detachment. They didn't try and change it, they just experienced it.
Look at that, isn't that cool? I love that, where like kids write all over the walls. That to me is neater than any art sometimes.
Oh
They say
yeah,
Maria forever.
that's beautiful.
There's a lot
Wow.
of things like when you pass by big movie houses, maybe we'll find one, but they have little movie screens where you can see clips of like Z or something like that. People watch it over and over. I've seen people, I've checked them out all day. I've gone back and forth and they're still there watching the credits of a movie because they don't have enough dough, but it's some entertainment,
Instead, radicals across America turned to art and music as a means of expressing their criticism of society. They believed that instead of trying to change the world outside, the new radicalism should try and change what was inside people's heads. And the way to do this was through self-expression, not collective action.
U V W.
What the fuck is this? Yo, this looks straight out of fucking that 1984 movie. I swear. Hold on, let me see that. Let me look at it.
Z.
Sorry, I'm gonna pause this for a little bit. 1984 exercise scene. Y'all gotta watch this. I swear this is what it looks like. I swear to you guys, this is what it looks like. I can't believe I remember this, but this is what it looks like, bro. I swear, I kid you not, bro. Y'all are gonna see this. Y'all are gonna laugh at how similar this shit is. Facts. Let me close this.
30 to 40 group.
There we go. There we go.
Right. Let's see which one of us can touch his toes. Right over
It's so similar, bro. See? I'm sorry. Nah, I really was laughing. It was funnier in my head, but it's scary, right?
Yes, you.
That's great. It cringes me out how similar it is.
Watch me.
Yeah. There it is. There it is.
There, brother. That's what I want.
Side by side. Side by side. Come on, let's go. Hold on, let's go back. Bro, there's no fucking way. There's no fucking way. Bro, I swear, that has to be based off of this scene. I don't care what anybody says. That scene on 1984 was based off of this scene. That's a fact. You can't tell me shit. That was based off this. It was based off of that.
Some of the left
Facts. 100%. Trust and believe.
That by detaching themselves and retreating into an ironic coolness, the whole generation were beginning to lose touch with the reality of power. One of them wrote at that time, "It was the mood of the era, and the revolution was deferred indefinitely. And while we were dozing, the money crept in."
What's your date of birth, Larry?
But one of the people who did understand how to use this new power was Donald Trump. Trump realized that there was now no future in building housing for ordinary people because all the government grants had gone.
What?
But he saw that there were other ways to get vast amounts of money out of the state. Trump started to buy up derelict buildings in New York, and he announced that he was going to transform them into luxury hotels and apartments. But in return, he negotiated the biggest tax break in New York's history, worth $160 million. The city had
Tax
to
break for what?
because they were desperate. And the banks, seeing a new opportunity, also started to lend him money. And Donald Trump began to transform New York into a city for the rich, while he paid practically nothing.
That ain't right, bro. Hey, Trump knows his way around taxes.
At the very same time, in 1975, there was a confrontation between two powerful men in Damascus, the capital of Syria. One was Henry Kissinger, the US Secretary of State. The other was the President of Syria, Hafez al-Assad. The battle between the two men was going to have profound
Is this
consequences.
Bashar al-Assad's father?
And like in New York, it was going to be a struggle between the old idea of using politics to change the world and a new idea that you could run the world as a stable system.
Same family, different story. Same
President
person,
Assad
same family,
dominated
different
Syria.
story.
The
A
country
different
was full of
person,
giant
same family,
images and
different story.
statues that glorified him. He was brutal and ruthless, killing or imprisoning anyone he suspected of being a threat. But Assad believed that the violence was for a purpose. He wanted to find a way of uniting the Arab countries and using that power to stand up to the West.
Moi,
3, 2, 1.
Kissinger was also tough and ruthless. He had started in the 1950s as an expert in the theory of nuclear strategy, what was called the delicate balance of terror. It was the system that ran the Cold War. Both sides believed that if they attacked, the other side would immediately launch their missiles and everyone would be annihilated. Kissinger had been one of the models for the character of Dr. Strangelove in Stanley Kubrick's film.
Mr. President, I would not rule out the chance to preserve a nucleus of human specimen. It would be quite easy.
Okay, I'm not gonna watch the whole thing, but we're gonna watch up to a certain point.
Henry was not a warm, friendly, modest, jovial sort of person. He was thought of as one of the more anxious, temperamental, self-conscious, ambitious, inconsiderate people at Harvard.
Kissinger saw himself as a hard realist. He had no time for the emotional turmoil of political ideologies. He believed that history had always really been a struggle for power between groups and nations. But what Kissinger took from the Cold War was a way of seeing the world as an interconnected system. And his aim was to keep that system in balance and prevent it from falling into chaos.
I believe that with all the dislocations we now experience, there also exists an extraordinary opportunity to form for the first time in history a truly global society, carried up by the principle of interdependence. And if we act wisely and with vision, I think we can look back to all this turmoil as the birth pangs of a more creative and better system. If we miss the opportunity, I think there's going to be chaos.
The flight has been delayed, we understand now. The Kissinger will be arriving here at about an hour and a half from now. So we'll just get have the press informed, and then we'll stay in contact with you.
And it was this idea that Kissinger set out to impose on the chaotic politics of the Middle East. But to manage it, he knew that he was going to have to deal with President Assad of Syria. President Assad was convinced that there would only ever be a real and lasting peace between the Arabs and Israel if the Palestinian refugees were allowed to return to their homeland. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were living in exile in Syria, as well as in the Lebanon and Jordan.
Have you found that the Palestinians here want to integrate with the Syrians at all?
No, never. They don't want, not here or neither in Lebanon or in Jordan, never. No, because they want to stay as a whole, as Palestinian. As they call themselves those who go back. Al-Aidun in Arabic.
Assad also believed that such a peace would strengthen the Arab world. But Kissinger thought that strengthening the Arabs would destabilize his balance of power. So he set out to do the very opposite, to fracture the power of the Arab countries by dividing them and breaking their alliances so they would keep each other in check. Kissinger now played a double game, or as he termed it, constructive ambiguity. In a series of meetings, he persuaded Egypt to sign a separate agreement with Israel. But at the same time, he led Assad to believe that he was working for a wider peace agreement, one that would include the Palestinians. In reality, the Palestinians were ignored. They were irrelevant to the structural balance of the global system.
The hallmark of Kissinger's thinking about international politics is its structural design. Everything is always connected in his mind to everything else. But his first thoughts are on that level, on the structural global balance of power level. And as he addresses questions of human dignity, human survival, human freedom, I think they tend to come into his mind as an adjunct of the play of nations at the power game.
When Assad found out the truth, it was too late. In a series of confrontations with Kissinger in Damascus, Assad raged about this treachery. He told Kissinger that what he had done would release demons hidden under the surface of the Arab world. Kissinger described their meetings. Assad's controlled fury, he wrote, was all the more impressive for its eerily cold, seemingly unemotional demeanour. Assad now retreated. He started to build a giant palace that loomed over Damascus, and his belief that it would be possible to transform the Arab world began to fade.
Can't rule by emotion, buddy. Can't do it. You can't.
Assad's optimism has gone. A trust in the future has gone. What has emerged instead is a brutal, vengeful Assad.
Come on.
Who believes
It's
in
one setback. It's one setback. Can't be like that, bro. It's one setback. Who's still watching? Hold on, let me see this shit. Are y'all still watching? Okay, good.
The original dream of the Soviet Union had been to create a glorious new world. A world where not only the society, but the people themselves would be transformed. They would become new and better kinds of human beings. But by the 1980s, it was clear that the dream had failed. The Soviet Union became instead a society where no one believed in anything or had any vision of the future.
What about the Soviet Union, bro? Come on.
А если у вас было желание, какое вы смотрели, вы выразить сейчас?
Чего?
Желание, если у вас есть, например, какое у вас было бы сейчас?
Чего?
Желание, мечта.
Мечта?
Да.
Ну, как вам сказать? Не знаю даже, что вам сказать. Мечта. Раньше не желая, не гадая, ничего не выйдет все равно.
Нет, ну только...
Я мечтала и гадала, у меня все наоборот идет. И теперь не верю, и никогда не буду думать и мечтать.
А вы верите?
Кому?
Что?
Кому верить?
Ну, не знаю, Богу.
Богу? Никому не верю, никто не верит. И вам тоже.
Ну, у тебя очень странная прическа. Где тебя так красиво подстригли?
Знакомилась с панками московскими, они подстригли.
А что это за течение-то, панки?
Ну, это люди, которые любят свободу, там терпят насилие.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
А ты не свободна, да?
Свобода.
Ну, мне кажется, у тебя что-то случилось.
Да.
Ясно. Потом тогда расскажешь. Потом, я понимаю, что тебе сейчас трудно говорить, в следующий раз расскажешь.
Я повторяю 10 раз и снова. Никто не знает, как же мне хуёво. И телевизор с потолка свисает. И как хуёво мне никто не знает. Все это до того подзаебало, что хочется опять начать сначала. Куплет печальный, он такой, что снова я повторяю, как же мне тулёво.
Those who ran the Soviet Union had believed that they could plan and manage a new kind of socialist society. But they had discovered that it was impossible to control and predict everything, and the plan had run out of control. But rather than reveal this, the technocrats began to pretend that everything was still going according to plan. And what emerged instead was a fake version of the society. The Soviet Union became a society where everyone knew that what their leaders said was not real, because they could see with their own eyes that the economy was falling apart. But everybody had to play along and pretend that it was real, because no one could imagine any alternative. One Soviet writer called it hyper-normalization. You were so much a part of the system that it was impossible to see beyond it. The fakeness was hyper-norm. In this stagnant world, two brothers called Arkady and Boris Strugatsky became the inspiration of a growing new dissident movement. They weren't politicians. They were science fiction writers. And in their stories, they expressed the strange mood that was rising up as the Soviet Empire collapsed. Their most famous book was called Roadside Picnic.
What song?
It is set in a world that seems like the present.
What
Except
song?
there is a zone that has been created by an alien force. People known as stalkers go into the zone.
Oh!
They find that nothing is what it seems. But they had discovered that it was impossible to control and predict everything. And the
Давай расскажешь. Как меня красиво подстригли.
Знакомилась с панками московскими, они подстригли.
А что это за течение, это панки?
Ну, это люди, которые любят свободу, там не терпят насилие.
А ты не свободна, да?
Свободу.
Ну, мне кажется, у тебя что-то случилось.
Да, очень очевидно.
Ясно. Потом тогда расскажешь. Потом, я понимаю, что тебе сейчас трудно говорить. В следующий раз расскажешь.
Я повторяю 10 раз и снова. Никто не знает, как же мне тулёво. И телевизор с потолка свисает. И какую мне никто не знает. Все это до того подзаебало, что хочется опять начать сначала. Куплет печальный, он такой, что снова я повторяю, как же мне тулёво.
Those who ran the Soviet Union had believed that they could plan and manage a new kind of socialist society. But they had discovered that it was impossible to control and predict everything, and the plan had run out of control. But rather than reveal this, the technocrats began to pretend that everything was still going according to plan. And what emerged instead was a fake version of the society. The Soviet Union became a society where everyone knew that what their leaders said was not real, because they could see with their own eyes that the economy was falling apart. But everybody had to play along and pretend that it was real, because no one could imagine any alternative. One Soviet writer called it hyper-normalization.
Hey!
You were so much a part of the system that it was impossible to see beyond it. The fakeness was hyper-norm. In this stagnant world, two brothers called Arkady and Boris Strugatsky became the inspiration of a growing new dissident movement. They weren't politicians. They were science fiction writers. And in their stories, they expressed the strange mood that was rising up as the Soviet Empire collapsed. Their most famous book was called Roadside Picnic. It is set in a world that seems like the present, except there is a zone that has been created by an alien force. People known as stalkers go into the zone. They find that nothing is what it seems, that reality changes minute by minute. Shadows go the wrong way. There are hidden forces that twist your body and change the way you think and feel. The picture the Strugatskys gave was of a world where nothing was fixed, where reality, both what you saw and what you believed, had become shifting and unstable. And in 1979, the film director Andrei Tarkovsky made a film that was based on Roadside Picnic. He called it Stalker.
Что случилось? Зачем вы меня остановили?
Я вас не останавливал.
А кто? Вы? Черт его знает.
How did you find Gabe? How did you find me? Oh right, you're sub to my YouTube. I forgot. Hey Gabe. Hyper normalization. I have to rewind it, but long story short, it's it's kind of a dystopian perspective of governments or something. That's how I can summarize it for now, because you don't watch politics. Hello.
It wasn't the harsh realism of Henry Kissinger any longer. It was different. It was a simple moral crusade, where America had a special destiny to fight evil and to make the world a better place.
The places and the periods in which man has known freedom are few and far between, just scattered moments on the span of time. And most of those moments have been ours.
He's someone from Discord that someone from Discord that I know.
God has placed the destiny of an afflicted mankind.
By the way, it's
God bless America.
This is a live stream, so it's like anyone can watch this.
This crusade was going to
So it's not like this is a little community,
face to face with
although it
Henry
is.
Kissinger's legacy.
But anyone can join.
And above all, the vengeful fury of President Assad of Syria. Israel was now determined to finally destroy the power of the Palestinians. And in 1982, they sent a massive army to encircle the Palestinian camps in the Lebanon.
That's nothing.
Do you know
323
how
subs.
strong the Israelis are? Do you know how many tanks they have outside Beirut? Do you know how strong they are?
يعني بيقول انه احنا بنعرف انه الاسرائيليين اقوياء فهل هذا بيأثر؟
But yeah, it's growing.
اسرائيل وامريكا وكل دول العالم ما بتأثر علينا طول ما سلاحنا بايدنا ولا اي دولة في العالم تقدر تحاربنا.
We are not ready to surrender.
طول ما هو الشعب رافع راسه.
I do actually, but I have no tasks assigned for now. So this is what I'm doing.
Dashing this building here because the PLO guys with us expect that sooner or later there will be a huge explosion. There have been several of these in the last few minutes. As you can see, there's enormous damage in all the buildings around here.
Yeah, alright. Have fun with that. Wait, you still have work tonight?
Awake.
She's gone. That was my friend right there in real life. She's just browsing YouTube because she has nothing to do.
2 months later, thousands of Palestinian refugees were massacred in the camps.
Yo, that's crazy.
But what was even more shocking was that Israel had allowed it to happen. Its troops had stood by and watched as a Christian Lebanese faction murdered the Palestinians.
Well,
this was the first of the massacres we discovered yesterday. Now, 24 hours later, the stench here is appalling. But the effects on the Israelis of what their Christian allies did here and in dozens of other places around this camp are going to be immense. There's always been a risk of such massacres if Christian militiamen were allowed to come into Palestinian camps, and the Israelis seem to have done nothing to prevent them coming into this one.
Why would they? What does it have to do with them?
President Reagan was forced to...
See, that's the problem. He's assuming that Israel is supposed to do something about it, as if they're like the state presiding over that territory.
But President Assad was convinced that there was another reality. He saw the troops as part of the growing conspiracy between America and Israel to divide the Middle East into factions and destroy the power of the Arabs. Assad decided to get the Americans out of the Middle East. And to do this, he made an alliance with the new revolutionary force of Ayatollah Khomeini's Iran. And what Khomeini could bring to Assad was an extraordinary new weapon that he had just created. It was called the poor man's atomic bomb.
Inshallah!
Ayatollah Khomeini had come to power 2 years before as the leader of the Iranian Revolution.
So this is in 1981 now.
Was precarious. And Khomeini had developed
because
a new idea
he took over in
of how to fight his
1979.
enemies and defend the revolution. Khomeini told his followers that they could destroy themselves in order to save the revolution, providing that in the process they killed as many enemies around them as possible. This was completely new, because the Quran specifically prohibited suicide. In the past, you became a martyr on the battlefield because God chose the time and place of your death. But Khomeini changed this. He did it by going back to one of the central rituals of Shia Islam. Every year, Shiites march in a procession, mourning the sacrifice of their founder, Hussein. As they do, they whip themselves, symbolically reenacting Hussein's suffering. Khomeini said that the ultimate act of penitence was not just to whip yourself, but to kill yourself, providing it was for the greater good of the revolution.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, good afternoon. An Iraqi Soviet-made MiG-23 was shot down by the Air Force jet fighters of the Islamic Republic over the northwestern Iranian border region of Marivan at 10:08 hours local time Saturday, said the Joint Staff Command's communique numbered 1710.
Khomeini had mobilized this force when the country was attacked by Iraq. Iran faced almost certain defeat because Iraq had far superior weapons, many of them supplied by America. So the revolutionaries took tens of thousands of young boys out of schools, put them on buses, and sent them to the front line. Their job was to walk through the enemy's minefields, deliberately blowing themselves up in order to open gaps that would allow the Iranian army to pass through unharmed. It was organized suicide on a vast scale. This human sacrifice was commemorated in giant cemeteries across the country. Fountains flowing with blood-red water glorified this new kind of martyrdom. President Assad took from Khomeini and brought to the West for the first time. But as it travelled, it would mutate into something even more deadly. Instead of just killing yourself, you would take explosives with you into the heart of the enemy, and then blow yourself up, taking dozens or even hundreds along with you. It would become known as suicide bombing.
So this is where it came from.
In October
supposedly.
1983, 2 suicide bombers drove trucks into the US Marine barracks in Beirut.
It was seeing something move that took me out of my trance. And then I recognized, oh yes, Marines were in that building. A lot of Marines were in that building. And that's when I ran down, and it was a black Marine. He looked white. The dust, it just covered him.
The massive explosions killed 241 Americans. The bombers were members of a new militant group that no one had heard of. They called themselves Hezbollah, and although many of them were Iranian, they were very much under the control of Syria and the Syrian intelligence agencies. President Assad was using them as his proxies to attack America.
Whoever carried out yesterday's bombings, Shia Muslim fanatics, devotees of the Ayatollah Khomeini, or whatever, it is Syria who profits politically. The most significant fact is that the dissidents live and work with Syrian protection. So it is to Syria, rather than to the dissident group's guiding light, Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran, that we must look for an explanation of the group's activities. Destabilization is Syria's Middle Eastern way of reminding the world that Syria must not be left out of plans for the future of the area.
There are no words that can express our sorrow and grief over the loss of those splendid young men and the injury to so many others. These deeds make so evident the bestial nature of those who would assume power if they could have their way and drive us out of that area.
But despite his words, within 4 months, President Reagan withdrew all the American troops from the Lebanon. The Secretary of State, George Shultz, explained, "We became paralyzed by the complexity that we faced," he said. So the Americans turned and left. For President Assad, it was an extraordinary achievement. He was the only Arab leader to have defeated the Americans and forced them to leave the Middle East. He had done it by using the new force of suicide bombing. Force that once unleashed was going to spread with unstoppable power. But at this point, both Assad and the Iranians thought that they could control it. And what gave it this extraordinary power was that it held out the dream of transcending the corruptions of the world and entering a new and better realm.
One should defend the realm of Islam and Muslims against heretics and invaders. And to fulfill this duty, one should even sacrifice one's life. We believe that martyrs can overlook our deeds from the other world. It means that after death, the martyr lives and can still witness this world.
By the middle of the 1980s, the banks were rising up and becoming ever more powerful in America. What had started 10 years
Yo,
ago,
I like that. I like that
the idea
I like that
of
self-driving
financial
cart
system
though.
run society was spreading.
It's cool.
But unlike older systems of power, it was mostly invisible. A writer called William Gibson tried to...
Hold on. There was actually something I wanted to say about that Soviet Union thing, but apparently they're not talking about it anymore. So here's the thing. I believe part of the reason why the Soviet Union ceased to exist was because it went bankrupt because of what they did on Afghanistan. Is that true? Checking the chat. Is it true or not? I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. So here's the thing. And I've always said this before. Maybe I'm just like a China simp or whatever, which is weird. But, you know, I keep saying this, that, you know, China has learned from the mistakes of the Soviet Union. Because, you know, China isn't, well, I mean, obviously they have beefs with us in the South China Sea. So this might change, like, you know, depending on what shit they do in Taiwan with Taiwan. But at least since its existence, China hasn't really done much, you know, foreign interventions. You know, they just care about the money because, you know, people need money, and, you know, they can't survive if people don't have money, and then people revolt. Because that shit has happened a lot, and that happened in the Soviet Union because they ran out of money. In this case, China is all about the money. And that's why, you know, they're a harder foe to deal with, you know, if we're the United States. So I just wanted to say that I know I was hoping that it would get back to the Soviet Union topic, but, you know, I think it's just focusing on corporate collusion now. So I just wanted to say that, and, you know, it's a good thing that at least China now, as one of the powers, is, you know, cares less about, you know, meddling in other countries, although they do like soft power shit here and there with sanctioning, especially sanctioning the Philippines. So they actually did it to us, but they want to maintain their economic prowess, which is actually amazing. That's actually better than, you know, trying to exert power through military force. In this case, economics, especially when the whole world is importing from you, you know, that's like something they can't take out. That's something you can't take away, you know. Economics, name of the game.
Dramatize what was happening in a powerful, imaginative way in a series of novels. Gibson had noticed how the banks and the new corporations were beginning to link themselves together through computer systems. What they were creating was a series of giant networks of information that were invisible to ordinary people and to politicians. But those networks gave the corporations extraordinary new powers of control.
Good morning, Southwest Development. May I help you?
Gibson gave this new world a name. He called it cyberspace, and his novels described a future that was dangerous and frightening. Hackers could literally enter into cyberspace, and as they did, they travelled through systems that were so powerful that they could reach out and crush intruders by destroying their minds. In cyberspace, there were no laws and no politicians to protect you. Just raw, brutal corporate power. But then, a strange thing happened. A new group of visionaries in America took Gibson's idea of a hidden, secret world and transformed it into something completely different. They turned it into a dream of a new utopia. They were the technological utopians who were rising up on the west coast of America. They turned Gibson's idea on its head. Instead of cyberspace being a frightening place dominated by powerful corporations, they reinvented it as the very opposite. A new, safe world where radical dreams could come true. 10 years before, faced by the complexity of real politics, the radicals had given up on the idea of changing the world. But now, the computer utopians saw in cyberspace an alternative reality, a place they could retreat to, away from the harsh right-wing politics that now dominated Reagan's America.
What the fuck is this?
The roots of this vision lay back in the counterculture of the 1960s, and above all, with LSD.
What? Okay, hold on. This is whack. This part is whack, bro. I'm sorry. This part is whack.
We've got some more acid over here if you want to go ahead and drop it.
Many of those who had taken LSD in the 60s were convinced that it was more than just another drug, that it opened human perception and allowed people to see new realities that were normally hidden from them.
See, the ones that have white in them are really great. Like a rabbit.
It freed them from the narrow, limited view of the world that was imposed on them by politicians and those in power.
In the United States, in the next 5, 10, 15 years, you're going to see more and more people taking LSD and making it a part of their lives. So there will be an LSD country within 15 years, an LSD society. There'll be less interest in, obviously, warfare, in power politics. You know, politics today is a disease. That's the real addiction. Politics, 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 politics. Don't politic. Don't vote. These are old men's games. Impotent and senile old men that want to put you onto their old chess games of war and power.
20 years later, the new networks of machines seemed to offer a way to construct a real alternate reality. Not just one that was chemically induced, but a space that actually existed in a parallel dimension to the real world.
Okay, I don't like this
with
part.
acid, cyberspace could be a place where you would be liberated from the old corrupt hierarchies of politics and power. That he called a Declaration of Independence of Cyberspace.
Not lie within your borders. We are creating a world more humane and fair.
Commit a few dozen overt acts, they called them, among a number of things having to do with computer trespass and I guess computer eavesdropping, interception, unauthorized access to federal interest computers, which is pretty vague.
The US military. They had helped create the delicate balance of terror. Now, TRW had adapted their computers to run a new system, that of credit and debt. Their computers gathered up the credit data of millions of Americans and were being used by the banks to decide individuals' credit ratings. The hackers broke into the TRW network, stole Barlow's credit history, and published it online. The hackers were demonstrating the growing power of finance, how the companies that ran the new systems of credit knew more and more about you, and increasingly used that information to control your destiny. And the system that was allowing this to happen were the new giant networks of information connected through computer servers. The hackers were questioning whether Barlow's utopian rhetoric about cyberspace might really be a convenient camouflage, hiding the emergence of a new and growing power that was way beyond politics.
Oh, Muammar Gaddafi!
But cyberspace
Wait, what does this have to
was
do with
not the
anything?
only imaginary story being created. Faced with the humiliating defeat in the Lebanon, President Reagan's government was desperate to shore up the vision of a moral world where a good America struggled against evil. And to do this, they were going to create a simple villain.
Oh no.
And imagine
my battery's running
one that
low.
would free them from the paralyzing complexity of real Middle Eastern politics.
It's red.
And the perfect candidate was waiting in the wings. Colonel Gaddafi, the ruler of Libya. The Americans were going to ruthlessly use Colonel Gaddafi to create a fake terrorist mastermind. And Gaddafi,
I mean, he kind of did.
Happily play along, because it would turn him into a famous global figure. Colonel Gaddafi had taken power in a coup in the 1970s. But from the very start, he was convinced that he was more
Plane
than just the
incident.
leader of one country.
Oh yeah.
He believed that
where
he was
shot
an
a plane
international
down.
revolutionary whose destiny was to challenge the power of the West.
Gentlemen, the Queen.
When he was a young officer, Gaddafi had been sent to England for training. And he had detested the patronising racism that he said he had found at the heart of British society.
Yes, I attended a course. I have been in England since 1966, from April to August.
You had the best months.
I was in Beaconsfield, a village called Beaconsfield, in Army School. In fact, we ill-treated in that place from some British officers. I think those officers were Jews, maybe Jews.
But ill-treated in what sort of way?
In many ways. They ill-treat us every time.
By being rude or by being bullying or?
In their own behavior towards us, they ill-treat us. They hate us anyhow because of colonization.
What about the robes? You like the robes? Hold on a second. Gaddafi robe. Gaddafi
his own
UN
revolutionary
speech.
theory, which he called the Third
Pictures.
Universal Theory. It was an
Yeah.
alternative, he said, to communism and capitalism.
Very sexy.
published it in
Yeah,
a
hold
green
on.
book.
Let me get a larger picture up in here.
He had sent
Large.
weapons to the IRA in Ireland to help them overthrow
Mm.
the British ruling class.
That's it.
But all
That's
the
sex
Arab
appeal
leaders
right there, bruh. That's
and
sex
his
appeal
ideas.
right there.
They thought that he was mad. And by the mid-1980s, Gaddafi was an isolated figure, with no friends and no global influence.
Best version of him.
That changed. In December 1985, terrorists attacked Rome and Vienna airports simultaneously, killing 19 people, including 5 Americans.
That's cringe,
There was
bruh. I
growing
wish I was
pressure
one of his
on President
female
Reagan
guards.
to
That's
retaliate.
crazy.
It's time to rename your State Department the Capitulation Department.
You want that BDSM, bruh? You want that Gaddafi BDSM, bruh? You're gonna be locked up in a room for days.
Being kicked around. You talk, Tut. Let's see you use some of these billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of weapons that you've asked us to approve. Your words are cheap talk.
President Reagan immediately announced that Colonel Gaddafi was definitely behind the attacks.
These murderers could not carry out their crimes without the sanctuary and support provided by regimes such as Colonel Gaddafi's in Libya. The Rome and Vienna murders are only the latest in a series of brutal terrorist acts committed with Gaddafi's backing.
But the European security services who investigated the attacks were convinced that Libya was not involved at all, and that the mastermind behind the attacks was in fact Syria, that the terrorists had been directed by the Syrian intelligence agencies.
The Americans say that the attack at Rome airport was organized by Gaddafi, not by Damascus.
No.
What do you say?
We don't have any evidence.
You have no evidence?
Supporting such affirmation. The only evidence we have shows a Syrian connection.
You say that it was Libya, and the president said that evidence of Libya's culpability was irrefutable.
Yeah.
But the Italian authorities to whom I've spoken say emphatically on the record that their investigations have shown that it was entirely masterminded by Syria.
I don't agree with that at all.
Well, they've interrogated the surviving terrorists.
I must just say I don't agree with that.
But you've no evidence that Libya was in on the planning either.
Our evidence on Libya is circumstantial but very strong.
But why does the president then say it's irrefutable if you call it circumstantial?
Well, people can be convicted and sentenced in our courts on circumstantial evidence.
Even more confusing.
That was like Jen
was
Psaki
although there
lying.
seemed to be no evidence
You know,
that Gaddafi had been
1980s
behind the
edition.
attacks. He made no attempt to deny the allegations. Instead, he went the other way and turned the crisis into a global drama.
It is not a time of saying it is a time of war, time of confrontation.
Threatening
Hold
suicide
on.
attacks.
Pause. Yo, his English accent is good here. The fuck?
Was that although there seemed to be no evidence that
And
Gaddafi had been behind the attack,
he's speaking in Arabic
He
in
made
the
no
UN
attempt to
in
deny
that
the
UN speech.
allegations.
But in here his English is fine.
he went the other way and turned the crisis
And look at
into
this
a global
acting
drama.
ass dude.
It is not a time of saying it is a time of war, time of confrontation.
Yeah, sounds a little Mexican, but you know,
Against America.
it's good. And this dude is an actor, bro.
Can be explained in racist and crusade terms.
Why didn't he need to translate?
Will have to be
Bruh,
military
the fuck?
attack. But Libya is
Nah.
affected
This is the first time I've
by
seen this.
such measures that Reagan has declared.
I didn't think he could speak English this well, or even
Muslim
understand.
Crusader.
Gaddafi now started to play a role that was going to become very familiar. He grabbed the publicity that had been given to him by the Americans and used it dramatically. He promoted himself as an international revolutionary who would help to liberate oppressed peoples around the world, even the blacks in America.
Nah, that's crazy.
Gaddafi arranged for
That's
a
crazy
live
acting, bro.
satellite to a mass meeting of the Nation of Islam in Chicago.
Brothers and sisters, it is with great honor and privilege that I present to you the leader of the revolution from Libya, our brother Muammar al-Gaddafi.
Gaddafi told them that Libya was now their ally in their struggle against white America.
To express my full support and support of my country to your struggle for freedom, for emancipation.
Gaddafi promised that he would supply weapons to create a black army in America of 400,000 men. If white America refuses to accept blacks as US citizens, he told them, it must therefore be destroyed. Gaddafi also invited a group of German rocket scientists to come to Libya to build him a rocket. He insisted it had no military purpose. Libya was now going to explore outer space.
I think it is peaceful and civilian activity for investigation of space and something like this, and it has nothing to do with any military things.
But no one believed him. Journalists warned that Gaddafi was really preparing to attack Europe, vividly dramatising the new danger.
That is something like this, which goes that way to put something into space. But the same device, tilted, say, to an angle of 45 degrees, could, of course, become something very different. A missile possibly carrying a warhead.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Gaddafi tried to make like an Islamic caliphate or something, which was whack, because, you know, they'd already tried it at this point.
Now became locked.
Okay, do you guys want to watch something else? It's been an hour already. What's this again? History Matters, because I think this is the video. Gaddafi. Is this it?
Sakit pa rin ng
Yeah,
ulo
this
ko.
was it. This was
Kahit
it.
tinulog ko na, nakailan na ako, di pa rin nawawala.
Di pinapatagal ang sakit ng ulo.
Well,
Jessica
he
agad.
liked.
Mainit
They liked him
ang
until he
pagaling,
did.
kaya di ka
Because I think
ipapahamak.
he had a war with Sudan, I believe. But I'm not sure. Let's see.
The Ottoman rulers weren't elect one in 1912 before, but he was seen pre-sided with, guarded by them, which is why I recognise him since he fought against the Ottomans, and also its new leaders
We're here.
disagreed with the
It's
concept.
it's
of
it's
caliph.
somewhere in here.
The rest of the Arab world saw him as someone untrustworthy who'd not
Nope.
only teamed up with the
Not
British for the sake of power, but someone who'd also quickly been discarded.
That's Saudi
by them.
Arabia.
Which is why, when the neighbouring kingdom of Najd attacked him, nobody came to his aid, he was forced into exile, and his lands were soon incorporated into the brand new kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And so after this, there was no one actively claiming the title. Led by Muslims in British India, nowadays Pakistan, a movement to restore the caliph pushed for an international conference to elect one in 1926. Several prominent names were put forward. King Fuad of Egypt, who said no, since he and many in his country, Saudi Arabia, wouldn't have had the international backing to take the title as the Ottomans had done, since world, and it was these practices which were the primary reasons that the Saudi leadership made no claim. Their doctrine strictly forbid the veneration of anyone except for God. Now, the Ottomans and most other Islamic countries did as well, but unlike them, the Saudi leadership believed that the continuation.
Okay. No, this was the video.
Throughout the
This was
late
the video.
19th
This
and
was the
early
video.
20th centuries, nationalism
Muammar
became a dominant force in global
Gaddafi.
politics.
Yeah, it's
It
an
saw many
Arab
peoples,
Federation.
including
But
the Germans, the
we'll watch the whole
Italians, the
video.
Poles, the Bulgarians, the Romanians, and the Turks, amongst many others, carve out national territories in which they and their people could live. This was because those people saw themselves and their neighbours as being part of a homogenous group. This idea that the same people should live in a single united political entity was also found throughout the Middle East and expressed itself in what's called Pan-Arabism.
There
Since
we
this never
go.
happened, the question
This is it. This is it.
why not, and how close did the Pan-Arabist dream come to fruition? Well, the idea of a unified Arab world started to be taken seriously in the late 19th century in opposition to Ottoman rule. During the First World War, many of these Arab nationalists rebelled against the Ottoman Empire and worked with the Entente powers to establish an independent Arab state. The Entente had agreed to this, but after the war was over, no. As such, Arab nationalism's aim continued to be the removal of imperial powers from their lands, and these nationalists were given outside help mostly from Egypt and Iraq. It wasn't until after World War II and the collapse of British and French rule in the region that Pan-Arabism really started to pick up. With the Cold War raging onwards, both the USA and USSR were looking to expand their influence in the region, and for many there, this wasn't on, because much of the Pan-Arabist ideology focused on removing all foreign influence from the region. It was also at this point that the overwhelming majority of Arab leaders, barring Lebanon, backed the creation of an Arab state. Yet this alone wasn't enough, and here we can learn from the unification of Germany, since unification was supported by most German leaders and the German people too. Yet it required several wars to achieve, and the reason why is that much like Arab leaders, the Germans agreed that a state should be made, yet they couldn't agree on who would lead it. So 1958 arguably saw the height of Arab nationalism when two attempts were made at building an Arab state. The first saw Egypt and Syria merge to become the United Arab Republic under Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser. The unification came about after the people of Syria got a bit communisty. Thus, the Syrian leadership approached Nasser to unify the states and put down any potential issues. There were several problems though. The first was that Syria was mostly turned into an Egyptian colony and it had little to no voice in the Union, and also, whilst Nasser was no friend of communism, he wasn't exactly protective of the business interests of Syria's leaders, and after numerous economic reforms they decided that this was a bad idea, and in 1961 Syria declared its independence. The second Arab state of 1958 was the Arab Federation, made from the merger of Iraq and Jordan, whose kings were cousins. Now, this union went nowhere because both had wildly different interests and neither could decide on who would be in charge. Not that the question mattered for long, since Faisal II, the king of Iraq, was deposed in a coup shortly afterwards. After this, there was one more notable attempt, and this was in 1971 when a coup in Libya placed Muammar Gaddafi in charge.
There we go.
Who promptly proposed a union with Egypt, Sudan and Syria. This was backed by both the leaders and peoples of these countries, but it fell apart where nobody could decide on the details, notably who would be in charge. And ultimately, it's this reason why the creation of an Arab state failed. The
And
public
that's
backing
why
had
it
always
didn't
been
work.
there, and the region's leaders had always pushed for the unification of the Arab world. The problem was that they all thought that they were going to be the ones to lead it. Combine this with differing foreign policy goals, particularly between the pro-Western Iraq and the pro-Soviet Egypt, and things get even more complicated. And it was these outside backers who had an interest in preventing the unification of the Arab world, since a unified Arab state would certainly have been a formidable global power and at the height of the
yeah, because they spoke Arabic, I think. It's, Libya is Arabic and French. I think that's their main languages. Yeah, Libya's a mess now. Libya is a mess now, though. Let's see. Breaking points. I'm gonna have to end this soon, but we'll see. Let's look at some foreign policy shit, since that's what you want. What? Of course. Elon is not for censorship, guys. No fucking way. No way. No way.
All right, let's
no
talk
way.
about Elon
Ain't no
Musk,
way.
Twitter, and the Turkish elections.
Yeah.
A lot going on. Am I sick of talking about Twitter? Yes, I am, but they're keeping things that we have to cover.
This
so
part is important.
This is actually incredibly important because it goes to the heart of what Elon has claimed he's doing over at Twitter, which he says he's a free speech absolutist. He said he was buying Twitter. I mean, he was sort of forced into it ultimately, but buying it to establish it as a beacon of free speech. And lo and behold, let's put this up on the screen. So Turkey just had elections. We'll give you those results in just a moment. The Turkish government, mere days before this critical and very close election, asked Twitter to censor certain content that was unfavorable to Erdogan. And Twitter just went ahead and complied. They say in response to legal process and to
Free
ensure Twitter
speech
remains available to the
platform.
people of Turkey, we've taken action to restrict access to some content in Turkey today. So that's all the information we got. Iglesias here highlighting the Turkish government asked Twitter to censor its opponents right before an election, and Elon Musk complied. Should generate some interesting Twitter files reporting, he snarkily adds. To which Elon responds, did your brain fall out of your head? The choice is have Twitter throttled in its entirety or limit access to some tweets. Which one do you want? Now, these choices are, I guess, difficult. You can either decide to go with the government censorship and do what the incumbent government wants, in effect,
Are you
to
kidding me?
impact
How
the
much
results of the
traffic
election.
would that be?
Something
That's
that
crazy.
Elon Musk and many others have been very critical of Twitter under Jack Dorsey, engaging with the U.S. government in particular, but other governments as well. Well, here Elon, who's supposed to be the beacon of free speech, just immediately caves and is extraordinarily defensive about it and doesn't even consider the possibility that, the principled thing to do would be, if that's really your choice, the principled thing would be to allow Twitter to be taken down rather than just cede to the government's wishes. Ken Roth, who we've had on the show, said, too clever by half, Elon Musk just gave away the store by making clear he prioritizes Twitter's presence in a country over the platform's free speech principles. He's invited endless censorship demands. To gain compliance, governments will just threaten to expel Twitter. So now they know what they have to do. They'll just say, hey, we'll cut Twitter off, and he will bend to their wishes. And then he continued, go ahead and put this next piece up on the screen. He says what makes this even worse is that Musk tried to justify his acquiescence to censorship demands by saying people can change the law allowing censorship, but Musk accepted censorship on the eve of today's election, making it harder for people in Turkey to change the law. So listen, whatever Elon Musk is wanting to do with Twitter and what he's wanting to turn it into and whatever changes.
What is this? By free speech, I simply mean that which matches the law. I'm against censorship that goes far beyond the law. If people want less free speech, they will ask the government to pass laws to that effect. Therefore, going beyond the law is contrary to the will of the people. What? That's hilarious.
He wants to make from the Jack Dorsey era. I think we can all put to bed the idea that this is a committed free speech play, because between censorship in India, between taking off random journalists that piss him off, I mean, anyone, I think at this point, has to acknowledge that whatever is going on here, it is not at its core about free speech.
Well, the capriciousness of taking journalists you don't like off.
Let's see another video. Oh, this has good.
Serbia, what's happening with you? So
Let me see.
Caribbean, Syria, what's happening with you guys? So there was some tension between us for about 12 years since our civil war started. So did anything change with that? Yeah, we finally made up. We're gonna resume consular services and flights between us. That's actually really nice. Yeah, there's a lot of changes that's gonna happen in this area pretty soon. Someone is not happy about him though. Do you mean me? See, nobody said anything about you. You just came here. You know yourself. Caribbean, Syria, what's happening with you guys? So there was some tension between us for about 12 years.
Saudi Arabia, he can do whatever he wants because he's a fucking trap.
Finally made up.
Oh no, you gotta dip. Alright, man. Good night, bro. Good night, brother. Good night, brother. Good night, brother.
Pretty soon.
It's a good thing I saw that because I was just watching videos.
See, nobody said anything about you. You just came here. You know yourself. Caribbean, Syria, what's happening with you guys? So there was some tension between us for about.
Know what I
12
gotta go
years
to.
Since our